Well, there seems to be maybe a bit of a sense of anticipation building up ahead of the ANC's policy conference. Technically, discussion starts on Friday. The party will discuss issues around its own internal administration, the step-aside rule, also going to be discussing policies for managing the country, particularly issues around managing schools, how to improve the economy, create jobs, even issues around stopping gender-based violence. Professor Sethulego Matebesi is the Professor of Sociology at the University of the Free State. Professor Matebesi, good evening to you and good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time. There's several themes at the moment. There are deep economic problems. There are issues around electricity. There are internal arguments about the step-aside rule. At this stage, is it possible to predict which issues are going to dominate this conference?
Hi, good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to South Africans. Fact of the matter is issues that relate to the economy will definitely dominate the conference, the policy discussion over the weekend. But what will stand out for me, because for me it's almost like a deal breaker, it is a step-aside rule. And by the way, for me it will be almost a proxy indication of who will emerge victorious in the December elective conference of the African National Congress. We've already seen that two provinces made public pronouncement about this particular issue, but I foresee this dominating the policy conference over the weekend.
It is, I mean, perhaps the signature reform in the ANC that was introduced during Ramaphosa's leadership. I mean, is it about step-aside? Is it about him? Is it about both of these things? They all relate to each other?
Yeah, no, well, actually what's supposed to happen, it should be about South Africans and not only about ANC members. But remember, it's an ANC event, and the ANC will have to look internally in terms of its organizational performance. And yes, to a large extent, there are many who are agreed within the ANC, and for them it will be all about unseating or weakening the so-called CR17 camp. And that, for us, many South Africans, will be a lost opportunity because I strongly believe that events such as this provides an organization which is more than a century old, an opportunity to go back to the basics and deal with issues such as discipline within the organization. We are still battling, I mean, the organization is still battling with that, which tells you there is a huge vacuum in terms of disciplinary and certain other organizational procedures within the party.
5 years ago, I mean, it seems like a long time ago, I suppose it was, but 5 years ago, you could see the two camps, and broadly speaking, there were two groups. There was the group supporting now President Ramaphosa, and the group supporting, really, former President Jacob Zuma through Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, now the Minister of Cooperative Governance. It seems to me that things are a little bit more complicated in the ANC. Yes, you have people who support Ramaphosa, but they sort of support him. Yes, you have people who maybe support KwaZulu-Natal, but they sort of don't have anyone else to support. Maybe Dr. William Kize, maybe Lindiwe Sisulu. It seems to me a little bit more diffuse, harder to assess what's really going on.
Yeah, well, it's very difficult to predict what is going on. One thing which really stood out for me about the KwaZulu-Natal elective conference, except now, obviously, the booing, which most of us have predicted will happen when the president arrives, is that they have not made any public pronouncement as to who they are supporting. And I even mentioned on another platform that one should not just think that the KZN delegation will go to the elective conference in December being united. Yes, and united means something else in theory, but in practice, some delegates may still decide to back any other individual who perhaps the province have not sanctioned. So all these issues makes it a very difficult. I know some commentators have already mentioned, based on the outcome of previous elective conferences, provincial elective conferences, that it seems as if President Cyril Ramaphosa has an upper hand. It doesn't look like a foregone conclusion that it's going to go that way. And for me, it is still early days to be able to predict what is going to happen come the December conference.
We've been talking about the policy conference for, I think, 5.5 minutes, and we haven't actually spoken about policies in terms of governing the country. And I hate to say this, Professor, but I suspect it may be like that for the next few days. In other words, I don't know how important this policy conference of the governing party is for actual governance.
Yeah, very difficult question. Stephen, I strongly believe that the ANC members has been privy to these documents since May this year. So they would have interrogated these documents. And perhaps these 2 days have just been set aside for them to then finalize that. But fact of the matter is, and maybe it is a problem of the ANC because it is a ruling party. But for me, if I look at government, we have policies that compares with the best countries in the world, but the problem is implementation. But policies such as cadre deployment and even the step-aside rule, those are policies that talks about the bread and butter issues for politicians. And that's why you will find forever there was always a fight back when these policies have to be implemented. What is very shocking for me is that no alternatives have been put into place when people make this public pronouncement that the step-aside rule has to be completely scrapped. And then the question is, what is the alternative? And I have been completely even against the ANC having a step-aside rule. They do have disciplinary procedures, and the question is, why don't they just instill and enhance their disciplinary procedures?
Professor Sethulego Matebesi, thank you, Professor of Sociology at the University of the Free State. Well,